Hey guys, Kyle the Death Knight of Anime here, and before I even get into the review, um, as many of you noticed, there's one review I basically have yet to do this week, which is from the manga review of My Hero Academia, and the reason for that, simply put, is because even though the manga chapter was released, the translation is shit. Like, I'm sorry, I cannot trust that. I cannot trust the current translation for shit. Like, it looks like they just kind of rushed that shit out. So, essentially, what I'll be doing is I'll be waiting for either pretty much it's either going to be like from midnight tonight. I'm going to end up doing the review, or pretty much or pretty much tomorrow after I do after pretty much do the pretty much anime review of My Hero Academia. So yeah, it's probably going to be one of those two scenarios, just to let you guys know. Um, but yeah, anyway, uh, let's move on, because with this review, I'm actually talking about One Piece episode 915. And okay, so here's one of the big takeaways from everything that happened in this episode and last week's. Luffy was underestimating and treating Kaido with kid gloves from the very beginning. And I genuinely mean that, because this episode and this fight, if you even want to call it that, perfectly encapsulates where Luffy went wrong in this confrontation. You see, aside from the fact that Luffy just wasn't strong enough, his biggest miscalculation up to this point has been that he's been treating Kaido like every other enemy he's faced up to this point. And I'm not joking, you could basically say he's treated Kaido like he treated Crocodile, he treated Doflamingo, he treated a freaking he treated freaking Moria. He treated Kaido in this fight like he did every other enemy. He didn't bring anything new. He didn't try to do anything different in order to fight Kaido. And part of that reasoning, on top of his usual overconfidence and the fact that he was just boiling with rage, is that he just doesn't have the experience of what facing a Yonko is really like. I mean, yes, he had a brief confrontation with Big Mom, but that didn't last long enough for him to truly gauge how strong a Yonko really is. Like almost immediately after his brief confrontation with Big Mom, his focus ended up getting shifted to pretty much facing pretty much Katakuri, who's only like the second strongest. The second strongest in Big Mom's crew or whatnot. So yeah, like the strongest or second strongest in Big Mom's crew. Like probably the strongest, but yeah. But yeah, Luffy he never got to really like experience what facing a Yonko is really like, and his lack of experience, and because of that, his lack of experience did put himself and his crew in a similar position to pretty much 2 years ago. Like in some ways, you can pretty much compare what basically happened with basically Kaido, pretty much Kaido like supposedly killing the Straw Hats, to what happened with Kuma. Like in this situation, it's even worse because because Luffy was the one who ended up provoking Kaido to come out and whatnot. And I know, and just to paraphrase, yes, I know Luffy during this entire fight was basically doped up on rage and anger and wasn't thinking straight. But in some ways, just in the mere fact that he was enraged, that he was angered, and that he wasn't thinking properly of basically how to truly fight against Kaido, it makes the situation even worse. It really does. So yeah, like what? So yeah, this in a weird way is a much needed defeat, because it gives Luffy the pretty much like Luffy's going to be a raging ball, a ball of rage after he wakes up, obviously. But this was a moment of clarity for Luffy because he lost, but it gave him he basically now understands how strong a Yonko actually is. So yeah, as weird as it was a defeat that was necessary, really. Now moving on, let's talk art and animation because again, this was another episode that Yonko Productions really was hyping up in this regard, and while it was amazing. I do kind of hesitate to say it's better than last week simply because there were a couple moments both in the beginning and both in the beginning and a couple places here and there throughout the episode where it was kind of edging close to cheap, but it still didn't quite get bad either. If anything, like the quality overall was still damn impressive, and you could still tell that they put just as much effort into this week's episode as last week. But but yeah, it is a case where I can't say it's basically as good as last week's, but it still is a pretty much a very impressive piece of a very impressive episode just on art and animation standpoint, I'd say. So, so obviously with this fight as a whole, between last week's episode and this week's, there was more than a few moments and scenes added. And the thing is, when you do something like that, with a fight like this, you have to be very careful or you run the risk of basically nerfing the main antagonist. But if anything, as a whole, I'd say the stuff that was added between last week's episode and this episode actually made Kaido into even more of an unstoppable force of nature than the manga did. Because really, when you look at this whole fight, it did not matter how many times Luffy hit Kaido. It did not matter. Luffy, by all accounts, like nothing Luffy did was doing jack shit. Even when Kaido was knocked down, Luffy was really just doing jack all. Like Luffy could have been punching like this whole fight could have just be like compared to Luffy just punching a brick wall. Like nothing was doing. He wasn't doing anything. He wasn't doing anything. So yeah, in that weird sense, even though we were all, there was always a worry when extra stuff is added to a fight like this. I'd say most of the time, it still worked out very well in the sense of just giving off that exact same kind of vibe of, okay, yeah, this is how strong. Okay, yeah, this is how strong Kaido actually is. Even when the motherfucker's knocked down, he still induces this whole sense of fear that yeah, he's unstoppable. You cannot anything you throw at him is just gonna practically bounce off him. It's his durability is insane. I will admit, and despite liking how they handled this fight on a bare minimum pacing level, it did feel like they dragged it out a little too much near the end for just the express purpose of basically filling time on the episode. But other than that, like I'd say the whole fight, it was handled pretty well, I'd say. And near the end of the episode, we get a pretty interesting reveal that Wano is basically where sea stone as a mineral originates, and that on the surface might not seem like a big deal other than for a little world building, but like we pretty much all knew it that sea stone had to come from somewhere. But this does essentially what this reveal does is it just kind of reveals a lot more of Wano's corruption, because this essentially means that Wano, and by definition Orochi, has been supplying the government with sea stone for assumingly since the series began. So yeah, Wano's been, so yeah, it's one of those things where you look at Wano now and say, okay, it's been a big player even before we knew it. And yeah, which of course is just like, in terms of the manga, it's basically just pretty much just Oda working his magic as per usual. But yeah, to finish, Luffy is basically Kaido's prisoner from this point on, or at least for a good while. And one thing I'm almost curious about is how much longer is how long we'll basically be spending with Luffy as a prisoner compared to the manga, because Oda definitely spent a good deal of time with Luffy locked away, so I wonder how long we're going to focus on that part of the story here in the anime, because the setup in itself feels like the type of thing that from Toei would basically use as a means to drag the pacing out. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm kind of betting that we're gonna be in like we're gonna see Luffy locked away for a little bit longer in the anime than in the manga right now. But yeah, guys, that's my review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Analyst, or Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.